muted. Sorry about that, folks. How is everybody this evening? Nice to see y'all. Been listening to the wind whipping around outside. Sounds like we might be in for a little bit of weather over the next couple of days. So I hope you're all indoors where it's quiet and safe. And looking forward to some good nature. Why don't we go ahead and get started with tonight's program? So tonight we're going to break with tradition. Usually, we've been doing this program now for over 2 years. We started back during the pandemic, and the format has always been to start off the program by discussing the previous week's newspaper column. Well, that column always comes out on Thursday, and on Saturday, there was some late-breaking nature news that I figured we better slide in here before we get to the column feature, which will be coming up after this. But this was just, I don't know. I have conflicting feelings on what played out here in St. Charles last weekend. You may have heard about the turkey. This is a bird that chose a very busy Saturday to come strolling into town. He was actually first sighted on the west end of Main Street. People started seeing him around, if you're familiar with St. Charles, around the Dairy Queen and by the middle school, by Thompson and the former Haynes Middle School. Just walking, sauntering, strolling. I don't know what the proper term is, but this is a photo of the bird on 3rd Street, which is just the other side here of where I've parked my car, next to Good Natured World Headquarters. Here he is moving along. This picture on the left, you can see there's a thing coming out of his chest or his breast. That is called in turkey geography, that is called the beard. Primarily, almost always, it's the male birds that grow these little projections. They are considered feathers, but they're a weird kind of feather. They almost seem like hair sticking out of the bird's chest like that. And the males, there is sort of a correlation between the length of the beard and the age, but it's not 100% reliable because sometimes an older bird might have had a long beard and then something happened to it and it was shortened. So, but the assumption is that this was a young bird. There were some talk on social media that it was an escaped or released pet, but I think those were all disproven. And this bird just basically went on a walkabout, and because it was a Saturday, a lot of people saw it. Susie, you sent me this picture. This is over by the what was the Blue Goose until recently. In the background there, we see the buildings known as the Brownstones. In fact, he even went over and checked out what was going on through the door there. Maybe he was just looking at his reflection. I don't know. He's kind of a handsome bird. But this bird just sort of didn't really seem agitated, didn't seem to be in any particular hurry. There were a tremendous number of people, though, who felt the bird needed to be rescued. There was a local wildlife removal firm that was called in. Personally, I think they were using it as a publicity stunt. They were not successful, though. They did not catch this bird. It continued its meandering ways, heading in a general southerly direction. It was sighted a little bit later on, I think around 4:30 or so, back on 3rd Street in St. Charles, heading towards Geneva. It was also sighted at 3rd and State Street in Geneva. And then since that time, it has made its way down into Batavia. I think the last sighting I saw was on the west side of Batavia. Assuming this is all the same bird. The bird was so people were so taken by it that they even created a Facebook page, which, yes, you can join if you'd like to. The St. Charles Turkey Sighting Gobblers. The most pressing issue on the page at the moment is, what are they going to name the bird? I called this segment Tom Charles because that seems to be the leading suggestion for the bird's name. But yeah, it was a meteoric rise on social media. Probably disappear just as quickly unless another bird comes along. Now, several years ago, gosh, I want to say probably 7 or 8 years ago, it was in the fall, not the spring, but we started seeing a lot of turkeys around St. Charles at that time. They weren't single birds, they were showing up in twos and threes. I actually did a series of 3 columns about wild turkeys in Illinois. I remember speaking with the Illinois Department of Natural Resources turkey biologist, because yes, they have one. Turkeys are one of those game birds that's considered to be of economic importance to the state. You get a special stamp if you want to go turkey hunting. So there's some money to be made, and there's definitely the state wants to make sure that its turkey population stays healthy. So at that time, I was talking to the gentleman, and I said, where are these birds coming from? I was actually picturing sort of like a Johnny Appleseed character running around town, dropping off birds here and there, because they were showing up at weird places. Probably the most unusual spot they were seen was on top of the Baker Memorial Church, which is right in downtown St. Charles. It's a big church, and there were two turkeys sitting up on top of the church. And they were showing up at people's bird feeders, different places on both sides of town. Anyway, he said that McHenry County, which is just north of Kane County, has a very large turkey population. My understanding is that continues to this day. And when there's a lot of birds of a single species, a lot of animals of a single species in an area, it is best for the population if they spread out. And it's part of their innate drive to do so. Usually it's the younger birds that, or the younger animals. This happens with other species too. Younger animals sometimes get pushed out, or they decide on their own, you know what, there's nothing that's going to happen for me here. I think I better go find some space of my own. So that's what I'm guessing was going on with this bird. This was an email I received 4 days before the Great Turkey Adventure in downtown St. Charles. This bird was sighted at Old LaFox and Burlington Road. So this is quite a bit west of town. This was just around rush hour on a Tuesday. So I think people might have taken note of it at that time. A day or two after this, it was sighted, I believe on Thursday, it was sighted not too far from Hickory Knolls, near Campton Hills and Peck Road. So this bird has been in the area for a while, and again, it doesn't seem to be in any particular hurry, just seems to be making its way. Hopefully it'll, find some flock mates at some point, and maybe we'll start to get a larger turkey population here in King County. I don't know that we've got quite the habitat or open space to rival what they have in McHenry County, but maybe we can give them a little run for their money. I did come across a study that talked about dispersal of wild turkeys and how it's the males that usually are subject to a dominance hierarchy or a pecking order. And not going to spend a lot of time on this. This is a study that goes back almost 25 years, over 25 years actually. And the takeaway from that little chart, SY, TY, and ATY, that's second year bird, third year bird, and after third year. So older birds, but you can see the numbers are higher in that second year bird column. Those are the young birds that realize they're not going to have much luck with the ladies if they're hanging out with all the older and more established toms or gobblers. So they generally want to disperse a farther distance. Those some of those distances there are they're all in kilometers, but it's a considerable amount of mileage that these birds will put on in order to find a suitable territory of their own. So I'm kind of interested to see if we'll have other birds showing up. I would love to find out if this was just one bird that everybody managed to see, or if maybe there was more than one and they just never showed up in the same place at the same time. Suffice it to say, it was a turkey kind of a weekend. And keep your eyes open because there might be more coming in the future. All right, so since we're talking about strange birds, let's talk about another one. Now, this was last week's newspaper feature. This you might recognize as the Cancer Center at Del Norte Hospital. The cars in the background there, that is Randall Road. And this is the retention pond. If you're familiar with Del Norte, you might know that in the summertime, actually, I think they're there now. I think they just got dropped off. There's a pair of mute swans. They're part of a goose management program that they have there. Mute swans are pretty aggressive, and having the swans there keeps the geese from nesting there. Well, this was pre-swan. This was a little over 2 weeks ago. Weather was pretty chilly, it was pretty windy, and a little dot showed up on this pond right there. Astute birders, though, were able to focus in on that dot and were able to see that it was a common loon, just one. And it was there for a few days. It was on its way north. This is a bird that I've heard about showing up in this area. You can see in this range map that Illinois is well within the common loon's migrating range, but I'd never actually seen one here. Now, some of you, I've talked about this in the past. You might have heard me waxing eloquently, or no, I'm never eloquent. Waxing, I was talking about the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. I talk a lot about that. It's a place that's near and dear to my heart. I spent a lot of summers up there. That's what I think of as being loon territory. And indeed, in looking at the map, you can see the orange. That is the breeding range for this bird, and the UP is right there, actually towards the southern end of it. But I have really fond memories of seeing this bird running to take off. Loons, they're a very ornithologists consider them a primitive bird. There are fossil records of loons going back 20 million years. That's quite a long time. You don't really see loons walking around the way you might a duck on land or a goose on land. These are waterfowl, but look at how far back on the body the legs are. This is a bird that actually uses a body of water, whether it's a pond or a lake. They use it as a runway. They actually have to run and flap before they can take off and fly. Their legs are really far back on their body, so moving on land is difficult for them. Now they're aces on the water. They're powerful swimmers on top of the water, and they're also very powerful swimmers underneath the water. When I was watching the Del Norte loon, boy, it was a chilly, raw day. I managed to leave both my binoculars and my gloves in the car. So I was standing out there shivering and watching for 15 minutes or so. This bird dove, I would say it was below the water surface as much as it was above the water surface. This bird dives to feed. They feed on anything from fish in frogs and tadpoles to crustaceans. I didn't actually see the Delnor loon swallowing anything, but I kind of think maybe it was feeding underneath the water, and it would be underneath for many yards. I would say 20 or 30 yards. It would pop up, in a different area. So very typical behavior to see these birds diving quite a bit. This is what I picture when I picture loons. I picture a family on a quiet backwater lake up north. I also have this sound memory. These are loons communicating. I've heard this described as haunting. It's something I could listen to over and over again. In fact, that sound is one of several reasons why I'm in the office tonight and not at home with the furry roommates. I'm pretty sure when they would hear that sound, all heck would break loose there at Casa Otto. So I apologize if you've got a furry roommate of your own that reacted to that, but it's such an iconic sound, and it is very much associated with the loons on their northern or summer territories. Now, this is another iconic image, the mama loon with the babies on her back. This arrangement of getting chauffeured around the lake only lasts about 10 days. Baby loons grow pretty quickly, and it doesn't take them too long. They are, you know, they're dependent on their parents for food, but they're born with a coating of down. They're not as helpless as some of our other types of birds. Their eyes are open when they hatch. This was an astounding figure. Two parents and two chicks can eat a half ton, so 1,000 pounds of fish over a summer growing period. Isn't that astounding? Shows that they are really good at what they do. This also is a little glimpse into, they've got these voracious appetites. They're very good at catching fish. This also, though, makes them prone to catching things besides food, and a big problem with loons. Their populations are relatively stable across their range. In fact, I kind of wonder if maybe they are undergoing a little bit of an uptick since we did see so many during spring migration this year. It could just be, weather patterns and things like that had them moving through this area in slightly higher numbers. But a problem with loons, because they're diving so much and catching fish, they do ingest lead. And as we've been hearing about recently with bald eagles eating carrion that has lead shot in it, these birds, as they're diving, they can pick up lead fishing gear, split shot and sinkers. If they happen to swallow that, they too can get exposed to lead and sometimes even succumb to lead poisoning. Now, we're not going to focus on that, though. We're going to get back to these cute little babies riding around on mom's back. They do this for a couple of reasons. They need to stay warm. Even a summer night up north can sometimes be kind of chilly. They need some warmth, and they also need some protection from predators. Muskies, northern pike, and snapping turtles are the 1, 2, and 3 biggest predators of baby loons. Now, adults are less, there's not a whole lot of predators that will go after the adults, but the babies are certainly fair game for these big-mouthed and usually hungry all the time sorts of predators. Now, the bird that was sighted at Del Nor was in its breeding plumage, and these three birds on the left, those are common loons in their summer or breeding plumage. On the right, these birds, they're either immature birds or they're non-breeding birds. They're in their non-breeding plumage. So same general body shape, just not quite as vivid of contrast in the plumage in the younger birds. So I've had over the years, from time to time, people have said, "Hey, you know what? I saw some loons today down in the river," and this might be in June or July or August, times when actual loons have moved up north. If you think you're seeing a common loon and it's not a migration period, chances are you're seeing a double-crested cormorant. There are some similarities between these birds. It's mainly so often when you're looking at birds, you find the lighting conditions are less than ideal. The bird is backlit or there's a harsh glare. You can't really see markings, so you have to go more by shape. And both the loon and the cormorant have this, I call it the low rider posture. They sit low in the water. They'll both sometimes hold their heads up and have their bills kind of pointed at an angle upward. But if we look closely at these birds, you'll see there's some significant differences. One is in the shape of the bill. The loon has a pointed, it almost looks like a giant woodpecker bill. It's excellent for grabbing fish and other prey. The cormorant bill has a little bit of a hook on the end of it. It's also a different color. Now, again, color can sometimes be hard to see, so you have to go more on shape or form. But and keep in mind the timing. So during spring and fall migrations, there's all kinds of things that are possible. But if you're seeing birds in the summertime, chances are, if you think it's a loon, it's probably going to be a cormorant. These birds are coming back now too. We'll probably talk some more about cormorants during a future program because they're a really interesting bird. A lot of controversy surrounds cormorants on a national level. They're blamed for a lot of things I don't think they deserve to be blamed for, like drops in fishing, game fish populations and things like that. But what's that? We'll get to that at another time. Just keep in mind, there are still some loons in the area. Look for that sharply pointed bill on a bird that sits low in the water. And if you're lucky enough to see the plumage, look for that sharp contrast on the back of the black and the white, almost like a checkerboard. So you had a call from the city of St. Charles yesterday, and Susie, I know we've talked about this too. For a number of years, the city of St. Charles has had at least one pair of geese nesting not on our Main Street Bridge, but over on the Illinois Street Bridge, which is kind of one of the backup bridges for getting across the Fox River, downtown St. Charles. These signs are now up on both sides of the bridge, on both the north and the south sides, because there are two pairs of geese that are nesting. These bridges have, let's go to this picture here. These bridges have flower boxes on them. And over time, I kind of wonder if one set of birds is maybe the parents that started this. Geese can live 20 years or more, and I wonder if this other pair of geese is maybe offspring from a previous year. I don't know, just a guess. But these flower boxes are like little nest platforms right there on the bridge. The city, as you saw on the previous slide, they've put up these signs that say aggressive geese on the bridge. And I see just a little bit of a problem because I don't know if they're aggressive or are they protective? And we could make the point of this segment, geese are nesting now, but I would rather focus on the use of different words. As nature lovers, if you could be cognizant of the words you're using, it can really help people keep you won't convey any bias if you watch the words that you use to describe a bird's actions. If you say it's behaving aggressively, that's going to set up a certain image or feeling in and people, when really, aggressive maybe, but they're really, in my mind, they're just protecting what's theirs. Now, so I shot this little video last night, and I did have tech support puppy with me. Boker and I walked over just to see, how these birds were behaving, and they were certainly alert, as they should be. I've got what might appear to them to be a wolf on a chain, on a leash with me. They were certainly keeping an eye on us, but they did not approach. They did not hiss. They didn't lower their heads. They didn't charge. I think they were just being protective. Now, as we get further along in the nesting season, they might step this up a little bit. Once the eggs hatch. So one thing that waterfowl are known to do is they lay their eggs, as all birds do. They don't just shoot out a bunch of eggs. They lay an egg about once every day or day and a half, and once the female has completed her clutch, then she starts incubating. So that way all the eggs are getting warmth at the same time, and it ensures that all the little goslings are going to hatch at about the same time. That's how a mama goose or a mama duck manages to get her whole brood walking behind her as they make their way to safety on a waterway. So these birds are just at the beginning stages of nesting, and they don't really have much to protect just yet. They are keeping an eye on that area, but I think if they were to start to feel uneasy, if everybody walked their dogs along the Illinois Street Bridge, these birds are early enough in the season, they might just move on and produce another clutch in another area. But anyway, think about your words as you use them. Are they being aggressive or are they being protective? I'll give you another example here. Is this animal being aggressive or defensive? This is a cottonmouth. This is a classic warning position. This is a view of why the snake has that name, cottonmouth. The inside of their mouth is white, and yes, it's there to serve as a warning. But when we look at the snake, it's not really coiled as though it's ready to lunge. It's just sort of got its mouth open, and it's just saying, hey, back off. I could step this up if you're not careful. But would we say this is being aggressive, or is it just sort of protecting its area? Then we have these snakes. This is our local water snake, the northern water snake. This was on a KCCN field trip we had a couple of years ago over at Creek Bend Nature Center at Leroy Oaks. This is, I call these snakes, they're the one animal that I will call aggressive or aggressively defensive. They just bite. They bite and they bite and they bite. I deserved it. I picked it up. You can see this was in May a couple of years ago, and this snake, its colors are dull. It was probably recently emerged from hibernation, and probably just wanted to get a good meal and shed its skin, and then I came along and picked it up. These snakes, they're not venomous. They have really tiny teeth, but they are also really sharp teeth. So yeah, it was just, it was defending itself. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I don't think we have to think of it as being, oh, those snakes are so aggressive. But it is the one snake around here that will come towards you instead of go away from you. Most of the time we say, oh, they're more afraid of you than you are of it. But this is one snake that will oftentimes hold its ground and sometimes even approach to defend its area. One other term I wanted to toss out at you. This was over at Delnor Woods. If you haven't been there recently, you really should go check it out. The beavers have been super active. When people see this amount of activity, they tend to say, "Ooh, look at all the beaver damage." But is it damage? Or, oh, that darn black bar is in the way. I should have put this up higher. Beaver damage, or is this just beavers being beavers? Is this just beaver activity? I tend to use the word activity so as to not paint the beavers as being in a negative light. They're just doing what they're programmed to do. They've been working on the dams that they've constructed on the little creek over there at Delnor Woods, and just having a good old time cutting trees down. So this was one of several areas that have had a lot of activity. Now, if this was, in a homeowner's yard, this is on park property, but if this was in a homeowner's yard and they just spent $5,000 on landscaping, they might call it damage. But again, it's beavers being beavers. It's just activity that they happen to be very good at doing. So just wanted to put that thought out there, folks, as you're describing an animal's actions or describing an animal itself. Some words carry more weight and create more negative imagery. A lot of times that is undeserved. Just a little food for thought. Okay, so let's switch gears and look at a snake skin. This is part of a text conversation that I've had going on with a homeowner up in Elgin. And he left a voicemail at Hickory Knolls it was a week ago Sunday. He was out cleaning up his yard in this area. It was a pretty decent day. The sun was out strong. The sun is much stronger now than it was earlier in the year. The air temperature wasn't super warm. I want to say it maybe got into the 60s. But anyway, he's out cleaning up his yard, and he finds this snake skin coiled around he's got a gas pipe easement in his yard, and this was coiled around some of the structures associated with the gas supply in his neighborhood. It was still damp, so it had recently come off of a snake, and he was a little concerned, so he wanted to know if we could identify it. So he measured it. He said that it was about 6 feet 7 inches. And he wanted to know what snakes around here we have that get that big. Well, looking at that picture, I had a couple of thoughts. What it actually reminded me of was our bull snake that we have at Hickory Knolls, Big Billy. Billy is, he's about 9 feet long. Bull snakes do live in Illinois, and they are our longest snake in this area, in Illinois. The thing is, they're not really common in Kane County. Now, there is, if you look at the Natural History Survey website, if you look at their Reptiles and Amphibians Field Guide for Illinois, there is a record for Kane County, but it did a little checking around. I talked with our Bill Grazer, our wildlife biologist for Kane County. He said that record was it was a photograph, wasn't an actual specimen, and it was most likely a snake that was either brought to this area and let go, or it was someone was keeping it as a pet and it escaped, or was let go on purpose. Anyway, we don't really have bull snakes, which are also known as gopher snakes, roaming around Kane County. So I'm like, okay, so that's not what it is. I asked the gentleman, could you take some more pictures? Because something that's really important in snake identification is looking at the shape of the scales, the arrangement across the back, how many rows of scales are on the back of the snake, the pattern, not just of the scales themselves, but if there's any color. A lot of times a snake's skin will, after it's shed, you can still see the pigment of the markings of the snake. So he did. He sent me this, and I thought, oh gosh, that pattern doesn't really look like anything native around here. I went to see today for myself, and this is the head of the snake. So there's our 2 5/8 inch mark, the lip balm marker for scale. This is one big snake. Here it is from a little bit farther away. You can see a better view of the markings. That, not super up on the markings of exotic snakes, but I'm pretty sure this is a type of boa constrictor. The gentleman split the skin down the side, down the belly, and then mounted it. I actually met Kelly, our animal care professional at the Nature Center. I said, hey, Kelly, can you lay down next to the snake skin so people can get a good idea of how big it is? This is one big snake. So Kelly and I spent about an hour at the gentleman's house today at lunchtime, and we poked around. There's a culvert, and he's on the far west side of Elgin. He's not too far from a forest preserve, which might indicate that there was a release of some sort. If somebody had this big snake that they didn't want anymore, so often people think, oh, I will give it its freedom. I'll take it to a park. I'll take it to a forest preserve. He's also checking with his neighbors up and down the street just to see if anybody might be missing a big pet. But there is a culvert on his street that goes underneath the road. It's crushed on one end. There was a truck that went off the road this winter, and it crushed one end of the culvert. So I'm kind of wondering, the culvert was about, I don't know, 6 feet or less from where he found the skin. I'm kind of wondering if the snake is holed up in there. I'm also kind of wondering if the snake is still alive, because we've had some pretty chilly days. Now, snakes can withstand cold temperatures for periods of time if they're protected from freezing, and a culvert just might offer that sort of protection. I went up today because the sun was quite warm again, and thought if there was a chance that this thing was going to be on the move, that this would be a good day to look for it. Didn't have any luck, didn't see any more signs. You notice at the right hand side here down by Kelly's feet, that's the tail end of the snake, but that is not the tail end of that skin. I would say there's probably at least 2 more feet remaining that is either on the snake or we did look around the yard pretty thoroughly. We've also had a lot of wind, though, so if the rest of the shed did come off, it could have blown somewhere else. But anyway, I'll keep you guys posted. This was one of the parts of my job that I really find fascinating. Things that people see and or have found, and help us learn more about what we have going on around us in the big wide world. Okay, this is just a little public service reminder. Any of you who have gone out and collected Oothecae, that's the fancy word for egg case of the Chinese praying mantis, had a little bit of a blessed event, times about 200 here last week. Diane, thanks again for taking some of these little ones off of our hands. mentioned to you guys a couple of weeks ago how Jill, one of our restoration ecologists, had gone out and she's been collecting these Chinese mantid cases all winter long. They are somewhat invasive in this area, and there's thought that they are displacing some of our larger spiders. So they are starting to hatch. I had some on my desk, and lo and behold, out they came. Now, if you do have one and you're looking to set it up in preparation for your blessed events, this is what we did at Hickory Knoll. So this is a plastic, what we call a critter keeper. You can use, I've used a gallon pickle jar, really any sort of container that you can put. You notice across the top there, that's a paper towel. Paper towel makes a great cap for whatever the container is. Poking holes in a jar lid, one, sometimes you end up scraping your hand or cutting yourself on the sharp poked hole. But the other problem, these guys, some of them are so small they can sneak out. But a paper towel, a piece of cloth, a couple layers of cheesecloth, those make excellent lids for insects like this. That what looks like wet paper towel down at the bottom is wet paper towel. It's a great way to give insects moisture. If you just give them a little cup of water, they'll fall in and they'll drown. But if you put either a wad of paper towel, or if you've got a natural sponge that hasn't ever had any soap or anything on it, you can put that in there as a source of moisture. It also helps with humidity too. Humidity is probably the biggest problem these insects face growing up indoors. Internal humidity, indoor humidity, humidity levels are so low so often that these insects cannot shed properly. Their skin doesn't come off right. They end up getting stuck, sometimes even suffocated within those skins that are halfway on and halfway off. So just a little public service reminder, if you've got a praying mantis egg case, you probably want to contain it because it might be hatching soon. There's a chance it might not hatch at all. We collect a lot of these and nothing happens with some of them, but I was kind of surprised when these started popping open. And again, Diane, thank you for taking some off of our hands. Okay, so I showed this clip last week. I'm going to try it again. Because the audio, the snoring sound of the leopard frog just didn't come through really well. I added this time an actual recording, better recording from a real recording professional. Listen for these guys. This is the call that often gets drowned out by usually chorus frogs because they tend to be calling at the same time. And then last time I forgot to put the picture up so you would know. This is a leopard frog, a northern leopard frog, calling right now in a temporary water area near you, some sort of ephemeral pond or snow water drainage, snowmelt drainage area. These guys are still active. Getting some rain tomorrow. Actually, those storms, we could get quite a bit of rain, but this is a great frog to go out and listen for. And if you're lucky enough, they're big enough that you can even see them. Leopard frogs, I think they're 3 or 4 inches from the tip of their nose to their little froggy bottoms. Keep an eye out, keep an ear out, because they're out there. And oops, that's what I had. I'm gonna stop the screen share here and we'll get to our chats. All right. Let's go up to the top here. Yeah, loons are really, really unique birds, and this is the I don't know if it's people. There's more people looking, or if we actually had more loons coming through this year. I talked to Ryan, our another one of our restoration ecologists, and he's on the river um, a lot. He's quite a fisherman. He says that he might see one um, a year. Um, and if Ryan only sees one a year, they're not super common, but there seemed like several people were reporting loon sightings. There was after the loon was spotted at Delnor. About 3 days later, there was one spotted on the Fox River over by the Redgate Bridge. So I kind of wonder if maybe it was the same one. Laura, to answer your question, it's not there anymore. Um, Oh, then they're expand. So the cancer center is expanding and taking some of that retention pond. Um, I think one of the reasons. So loons, they need this runway like space on the water that they're on in order to take off. It can be anywhere from 30 yards up to a quarter of a mile, depending on how strong the winds are. The Delnor Pond isn't a quarter of a mile long, so I think one of the reasons the bird hung out there as long as it did was because we were having such strong winds. Um, but it did eventually take off and is hopefully on its way up north. Um, the geese are busy hissing as you walk by. Yeah, they're definitely setting up. Uh, they're making their plans. I don't know, Meg. I don't know if you noticed the birds that are on the flower box on the south side of the
Mhm.
bridge. Um, she seems to be sitting as though she's already got eggs. The birds on
Yeah.
the north, I didn't see any eggs yet, but I
No.
also, again, I was with my dog. Have you seen eggs on either side?
No, I've seen the egg. I think there's eggs on the south side. She's sitting there, and perhaps that's the male hissing
Yeah,
it.
he sticks
But I
there.
have a big, I have a big black hat with a brim. I wonder if that would,
That could be. You
because
seem
I
maybe
might
maybe they
look.
thought you were flaring your hood at them like a
Yeah, who
cobra or
knows?
something.
So who knows? But I've walked a few times over there on my way to the library, so it's been so interesting. I've really enjoyed it.
Yeah, well, so the city, it's funny when I talked to the head of public works. He said that there's been a lot of changeover in city government lately, and these birds that they've been on the Illinois Bridge for several years. They've been there so long that the city sign shop actually has signs already made that say geese. um, so this isn't really anything new, but some of our elected officials are a little bit nervous about these birds, and that's an area. There's a lot of nightlife there.
Mhm.
There's talk of a new building going up over there. I think there's some concern. What are these birds doing here? When really they've been doing it all along,
Mhm.
and we've all managed to survive.
Yeah, well, they're certainly interesting, and all they are doing is protecting their young.
Exactly. Well, and I think it's kind of genius on their part. A flower box suspended on a bridge rail isn't really, I don't really see coyotes going and attacking them to steal their eggs. I don't see mink going to that area. Mink are huge predators of goose eggs, sometimes even geese. But I think that's a pretty predator-proof area, and the birds are used. They're used to having people around, so we're not the threat that that we might seem to be to other more wild animals. So I think it's a pretty smart move on their part.
Oh, and
We'll
they're
see
close
though.
to the water.
Yeah, yeah. When they're done, they just here we are, kids. Um,
Last
so
when I was down there, there were two eggs on the north side and then four eggs also. So there were two little patches. The south was already sitting on them. but
Okay, so there are eggs on both sides of the
well,
bridge?
there were. I don't know if there are any more, but there were six of them altogether on the north side, and then they were sitting and protecting the south side. So I didn't go over and count.
Sure. Well, so that's important because the city's question to us was, if there aren't any eggs laid yet, then the nest could still, like, they could put something over the flower box and prevent the bird from nesting there. But if there's eggs on both sides, and the head of public works, he's fine with letting them go on. He's been aware of them for a long time. He doesn't really see, they're any great threat to public safety or anything.
Well,
Not
I
like
don't
darn
know.
turkeys.
There were no geese on the north side. It was daytime when I was down there last couple of days ago. And
Okay.
so I don't know if something came and got those eggs or if someone came and got those eggs.
Oh.
Or if they're still there. I don't know. I'll
Well,
check.
I saw geese sitting there on the north
On-
side, but I
on the
didn't
north
walk on
side?
that
Good.
side.
Good. Okay. Great.
Yeah, and so the video from tonight I took last night.
Uh-huh.
And I had Boker with me, so I didn't want to get them too agitated. I didn't want to, get the birds all worked up. There's a fair amount of traffic out. This was right around dusk, and I didn't want them to, flop into the street and get run over or something. So I stayed there. There's those kind of cut or scallop shaped areas on that bridge, and I was standing there probably 10 feet away, and we were looking back and forth at each other, but I couldn't see if there were any eggs there. But it sounds like she's still in the process of laying on and hasn't started incubating them yet.
That's kind of what I was thinking, but
Okay. All right. Yeah, I meant to get over there today, and then I got all excited about the big snake, and I never made it. So I'll try again tomorrow.
Well, thank you, Pam, for all your research.
That's what we do. So let's see. Didn't know that the first eggs laid in the clutch could survive. Yeah, so it's kind of a thing that waterfowl do. Most, like, a lot of birds will start incubating the first egg, and that's why, like with owls, you'll see sometimes quite a bit of difference between the first egg that was laid and the first egg that hatched versus the last one to hatch. There'll be the big baby and the medium-sized baby and then the little baby who's younger than its siblings. But yeah, the waterfowl do that just because oftentimes their nest is going to be a distance away from where they need to end up. And if they had one baby and then 2 days later another one and then 3 days later another one, I'm going to be running back and forth and they probably all get eaten. But by having everybody hatch at about the same time, then they can move on. And the egg doesn't start to develop until the heat is applied. So I guess there's a period of time there where they can sit and still be viable, just not starting their development yet. Hey, call them the nasties. Oh man, yeah. I've been pecked a couple of times by a goose, and to me, it's just kind of like a pinching sort of a sensation. It's not like they have big teeth. They're not like gripping and tearing. I'd imagine if you had bare legs, if you're wearing shorts or something, they could probably pinch you pretty good, maybe break some skin. But I'm still on the camp firmly in the. I would rather be in amongst a flock of geese as opposed to a big flock of people. That's just me. Not sure how many braying makes. Okay, so Diane took home some of those baby mantids that hatched last. That was on Thursday of last week. And if you're doing a little experiment with them yourself, trying to raise some, the first step is to kind of let the group duke it out. The larger, stronger, more dominant individuals are going to eat the smaller and weaker ones. So you've got probably at least a week's worth of food supply just when the case opens up. After that, then flightless fruit flies are what I've always bought to feed them. Some people will buy what are called pinhead crickets, but it's my understanding those are not allowed to be sold in Illinois, or at least in this area, because of they're so tiny, and then the risk of them getting out and infesting areas is too great. So, but the fruit flies, there's not as much worry on because they don't last that long and they don't fly. Yeah, good luck with that, Diane. Keep us posted. And let us know if you end up with a sizable one. There is kind of a tricky period. They have to molt maybe 2 or 3 times. Each life stage is called an instar, and I want to say they have like 6 or 7 instars before they are considered an adult. And there's some perilous times there, getting the skin cast off, not getting stuck. Sometimes a leg comes off in the process. So yeah, I'm anxious to see how you do. And I've got the rest of them in my refrigerator.
Yeah, I put the other egg cases in my fridge too, so I can take one out at a time. I'm gonna I think when I get down to about 3 of the babies, I'll separate them, and then that way I have a better chance of getting an adult.
Okay. Yeah.
So that's my plan anyway.
I might pull a couple more out because right now they're in the Ziploc bag in my refrigerator, and every time I open the fridge, I think I've got like some sliced sausages, and I go, "Oh, when did I? Oh, that's not."
I know.
Maybe I need to move them farther back, but I don't want to forget about them.
Right.
Oh. Well, Michelle, does the leopard frog call change when it's not in the mating season? You know, they don't really make much sound when they're not in the breeding season. Now, some of our frogs, like the green frog, which is another frog in this area, they have not started calling yet. But the male green frog, its mating call is it's likened to a loose banjo string. To me, it sounds like a cough. It's kind of a bong, 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 bong. Sound that they make. But green frogs, I think it's both the males and the females will make a kind of a squeaky sound if you're walking along and you scare one that's maybe that's up on the grass alongside the river or a pond, and they'll make a squeak. But by and large, frogs don't vocalize when they're not in breeding mode. So the change is that they're not making any sound at all. That makes sense. There are a lot of wild turkeys in Kane County. Meredith, they're around. There's some talk as to what the makeup of the wild turkeys that we see. There's over the years there's been game farm escapes or releases. I know over in Wheaton there's been a flock for, oh gosh, I don't know, 20 years or more over at Herrick Lake Forest Preserve, and they've just kind of roamed around that southern part of Wheaton. And those were always thought to have been releases. I don't know if we've got big flocks. When the turkey escapade was happening last weekend, somebody said that there is a flock on the grounds of Mooseheart in North Aurora, but I've never seen a large group of turkeys, a big flock in Kane County. Not to say they're not here, but they're just not something you see here. I have seen them, though, in McHenry. Right after I started at Hickory Knolls, so that was, or at the Park District, so Hickory Knolls wasn't the thing yet. So that was in 2007. I think it was that fall, I found a bunch of turkey wing feathers in what is now the Hickory Knolls Natural Area. So I don't know what happened. I didn't find a carcass anywhere. Don't know exactly what happened, but it gave me hope at the time that there were turkeys in those woods, and that was the only time I've ever seen any sign of turkey there. It was just that one time, and it was just a few turkey feathers kind of clumped together as if they'd been torn off of a bird. So, and then pelicans. So yeah, there were pelicans here a few weeks ago, and then there's been kind of a quiet period. There were over 200 pelicans. Bonnie, I think you saw them down on the Fox River in Yorkville, and I think those have been making their way north now along the Fox River. So we might see some more pelicans coming through. And yes, a loon on Loon Lake out at Silver Spring State Park in Yorkville. That's kind of cool. Must have been reading the signs, huh? I don't know where we're at with the loon movement, if we might see some more. I'd like to think that there's a chance we might see a couple more before migration has ended. And two, yeah, keep your eyes open. The pelicans, they're still around. So I would say that large group that was farther south on the Fox River, they might be moving forward in smaller groups. So keep your eyes open for them too. Oh, Marianne. Saw a turkey walking by the Dunkin' Donuts, and also saw a loon this week. Oh, no kidding. On the river across from Potawatomi. No kidding. Okay, so yeah, it's springtime, and you just never know what's going to be showing up, which is what makes this time so magical. There's I hope to maybe next week we'll have hit, well, actually, I think it's supposed to get back down in the 40s again. I really want to do some segments on our spring ephemerals, our wildflowers, because they are starting to show here and there. Bloodroot and hepatica are our two very, along with the skunk cabbage that we talked about a few weeks ago. Bloodroot and hepatica are early blooming species. Then we sort of go through a sequence where we'll see trout lilies and trillium, and bluebells they're coming up. I've seen a few bluebell buds, so if we get a nice day like we had today, which I don't know, it's supposed to be warm tomorrow, but it's also supposed to be storming. But spring wildflowers, so there's the birds in the sky, there's the flowers on the ground. Spring is popping up all over, and I hope you get a chance to get out and enjoy it. With that, pelicans at Nelson Lake, Laura, I don't know if there's been any for any length of time there. The times I heard of them in Batavia, they were at the river, and that was a few weeks ago. They were at Depot Pond and over that area they call Duck Island, that's north of the dam in downtown Batavia. I don't know. Has anybody else seen or heard pelicans at Nelson Lake? Or heard about, I should say.
Yeah, I just know in the past that's one of the places that they've stopped over at, and I've never been able to see them. So I was wondering if they'd been spotted there yet or not.
Somebody told me the other day that there were some out there.
Okay.
But I don't know how many.
I can give it a try. Another reason for a hike.
There you go.
I've also found them at Fermi Lab in the past.
Pelicans. That's a good tip too, Meredith. Thank you. Actually, you know what? I'm glad you said that. So for years, there's been a core of birders that work at Fermi Lab, and they have posted their sightings on an almost daily basis. They now have a website, an official website. It's not part of the Fermi Lab. It used to be part of Fermi Lab's website, and now they've got their own. I think it's Fermilab Birds. But if you just Google or put into your search engine Fermilab Birds, the website is going to come up right away. That is a great way to see what's in the area. I used to do that when I worked at Red Oak. If I thought I saw something unusual, I didn't trust my skills enough, but I thought if someone at Fermi has seen it too, then I know that I actually did see it. It's records that go back for a couple of decades now of things they've been seeing on the property there. Fermi is, it's over 6,000 acres, so it's our largest natural area in this part of the state. So a lot of things show up there. It's a good habit to get in to checking to see what's showing up there. And then also Kane County Audubon, so kaneCountyAudubon.org, Kane County Audubon, all one word, .org. Their sightings page is very helpful too, because people will write in with what they're seeing and often accompany that with photographs. So those two sources are very helpful. If you're a Facebooker, I am not. I had to get a Facebook account for being able to maintain our park district Facebook pages, but so I hold social media, out at a distance, but there are some helpful pages there you might want to follow. One of those is the Illinois Birding Network. You can follow them, and that is also a big clue of what's moving through the area. Since it's a statewide group, if someone is seeing something, say down around Springfield, there's a good chance we might then be seeing it in a week or two in our area up north here. So those are good resources for staying in touch with what's around the area. Skunk cabbage at the fen. All right. Yeah, so I have my calendar marked for September 1st to go back to the fen so I can see the skunk cabbage fruit, which in all the years I've looked at skunk cabbage in the spring, I've never gone back to see how the seeds form. So you might want to do that too, Michelle. It's another nature nerdy thing to do.
I couldn't believe too how much I saw. I mean,
Yeah.
the fen's not huge, the walking area's pretty small, but there was a ton of it. It was sunny out, so it was easy to see it.
Oh, cool. Well, that's big credit goes to our restoration team. The fen has had a lot of ups and downs over the years. It was before this area was settled, it was a fen where the groundwater comes up. It's very alkaline. It creates a unique plant community because of those qualities. Well, then people moved into the area, and the upland part of that park, that was farmed for many years. That changed the lay of the land there. There was ice that was harvested from the river there, so there was quite a bit of foot traffic, which brought in some non-native plants and seeds. There was the reed canary grass years where that very highly invasive plant took over and pretty much smothered out everything else. And when that was all scraped away, then it started the cattail years, and the invasive narrowleaf cattail took over. So our crews have been working really hard to get these really aggressive growing plants out of the way, and look what happens. We find there's still skunk cabbage there waiting to be found. So that's really exciting, and the fact that we're seeing that sort of diversity there is pretty cool. Last year, it was about this time, there was a pair of sandhill cranes that stopped there, and they did some displays. They were doing their dances that they do, and their honks that they do. They didn't stay, but I wonder if maybe someday we might be lucky enough to get a pair of cranes nesting there. We'll have to see. But anyway, I'll just keep talking, and it's getting late, folks. It's after 9 o'clock. It's Betty Bye time. So I really appreciate you spending some time this evening sharing your thoughts and the sites that you've been seeing. We will gather again next week. Hope to see you then.
Thank
Take
you.
care, everybody.
Thanks, Pam.
Bye. Watch out for the geese and the turkeys. Good
Thank you,
Pam.
night, everybody.
Thank you. Good night.